is the fastest growing startup ecosystem in the world. The fastest growing, yes, you heard it right. It also has the third largest number of startups anywhere on the globe. Now, many are asking if this is the best time to turn entrepreneur to start up in India. The cynics are saying, is the startup ecosystem heating up a tad too quickly? Well, whichever side of divide you're on, this is the best time, of course, to take part in the show. Send us your thoughts, tweet us. You can write to us on Facebook and also SMS us what you think about this. Let's get started right away. Joining me on the program, Ritesh Agarwal, founder Oyo Rooms, and also Samyukth Sridharan, President and Chief Operating Officer, Cleartrip. Thanks both so much for taking our time to speak to us. Ritesh, you made a very interesting point, minutes before we started. You said that you feel that you're a marketplace child yourself. Tell us a bit about that, because I'm sure there are lots of people out there who can relate with what you just said.
Yeah, so I think over the last 1 year, I think everything that I use as a part of my day period is related to one or the other startup, and there is a startup for that, and that does way better consumer experience, way better pricing than anything else which are current opportunities available for me to use. And that is frankly what disruption is, right? That you take something which is a real problem on the ground, you solve it for a user, you build an optimum pricing around it.
Right. Right.
And you continue delivering that over and over again.
Right.
So I sleep at Oyo's. I have breakfast with one of the food delivery startups. I have grocery from a grocery startup. I travel and commute via one of the cab startups. Like there is a startup for everything today.
Right.
And quite frankly, they deliver way better quality of experiences than any other opportunity that I had earlier.
Right. Mr. Sridharan, as someone who's been watching the space closely, why do you think there's been such an intense focus on startups in the last couple of years, especially say in the last 2 years? What really has shifted?
I think a few things, right? And we've been here for about 9 years and we've seen it evolve as we've evolved. I think the biggest change today is the fact that information is democratic and it's accessible. I think that is essentially what is ensuring that you have a million different ideas that are coming out every day, right? Any business, any startup, or any of us in the e-commerce space you look at, the underlying theme is change has been driven by technology.
Right.
And change has been in India very clearly proved that technology gets adopted much quicker than anywhere else in the world.
So in this space, Ritesh, if I may ask, there's once you're out there, your idea is out there, and then they do say that imitation is the best form of flattery. It's just out there. So in this kind of a competitive environment where you may sort of, it's not easy to, I mean, how far do you really keep the first mover advantage going? How does one sort of keep innovating, keep evolving? How do you stay one step ahead of your game?
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? I think the best thing about startups, so like just to take a next step, today starting a company has become easier than ever before. Especially because India's largest supermarket might not be real retail stores, that might be a mobile app.
Right.
India's largest hotel chain today is actually, which is us. We are not a real brick and mortar thing. Right?
Sure.
India's largest cab company is not a real taxi owning company.
Correct.
So our sense is, as this grows over a period of time, the real value is going to be able to sort of innovate, do the best things for the consumers. If you are the most loved brand in your space, frankly, nothing else matters.
Is that worrying? Unlike, say, there was to a brick and mortar space, because lots of people have said it's fluid. I mean, you have all the apps and you can sort of like switch from one to the other. Unlike saying, is that
No, so I would tend to disagree there, right? I think even in the space that we are in, while information is democratic, there are ways you can build brand loyalty. Yes, consumers will go and see what else is out there, but if you focus on solving his problem, and if you really deliver it in a no fuss, very simple, easy to use kind of an approach, I think consumers will come back to you again.
Well, I'll just take a moment now to introduce Upasana Thakur, founder of ZacPay and co-founder of MobiKwik. Thanks very much, Upasana. I know that traffic can be a bit of a nightmare, but I was reading something that you said about women in a startup space and what your journey's been, and you described it, which I think is sort of really nailing it. You said courage under fire. Yeah, has it been particularly tough, you think, because you're a woman?
Not necessarily. I think that the world and India as we speak is flat, and I don't really feel a difference being a man versus a woman. India can be a big enabler. Obviously there are security and infrastructure issues you have to deal with, but then every woman decides how she wants to cope with it. So you have to operate in the you know, in the structure that you
have.
that you work and live in.
So apart from, I mean, you're saying that being a woman, of course, not really a liability here, but what would you say then has been your biggest challenge on your startup journey so far?
So I mean, there will be challenges at some point. So for example, I'm also a tech entrepreneur. I'm also an engineer by education. But there will be times when people might question that, especially engineers in my own team. But you know, I have to be able to cope with that with reason and logic, and not necessarily that, you know, listen to me because I'm a co-founder. But I think that's healthy. I think that it's okay to be questioned by people in your organization, people in the ecosystem, and you have to be able to stand up on your own merit.
Which is of course the case, you know, which will in most ideal situations at work. But Ritesh, if I could ask you and then Samyukth, what is your biggest challenge? What has it been? I mean, which is the one moment where you sort of torn your hair out and said that I don't know whether I can carry on? Has that happened? I would imagine.
Actually not. Of course, there are challenges all over the place. But I have gone through situations which are really worse, and I think that is the part of startups which people realize once they get into this play, because it looks very exciting from the outside. But when you get in, so I was 18 when I started the company, right? 2.5 years back. A couple of months hence, I went broke, and I was in Delhi. I didn't have any friends, etc. My family is based out of Orissa. So I actually slept on stairs for 1.5 weeks before I found somebody who could help me with some savings. Because if I called my home, they just said, dude, come back. Yeah. And I could not do that.
That's the stuff that legends are made of, right?
Sorry?
I mean, sleeping out under the skies, and when you write, I think like your opening autobiography, I can just see the first chapter and what it's going to play out. But
like
you never thought of giving up?
Actually not, because you know, here's what I always kept thinking, right? You have this opportunity of solving something in this world for the first time, right? And then some of these things, I felt if it doesn't go where it, you know, I mean, where I aspire to build it to, I'd have actually learned a lot, and I was learning a lot during that period, and I continue to, right? Like at 21, building India's largest hotel brand, I think it's something that I had never imagined in the past, but I definitely knew that being a part of this would enable me to become a better person and create a massive impact, which is indirect employment for 50,000 people, direct employment for more than 1,000 people. I think that is something that I always aspired to build. And I felt if that did not happen, I'll learn a lot, and I could always go back and do the usual thing that people do.
Right. Mr. Sridharan, do you think that there's a shift here? There are people who are not, I think the one thing that connects or is sort of similar to all startups usually have in common is the fact that they know they're taking a huge risk. They're still doing it, shying away or rejecting other more secure jobs, which is traditionally what we have preferred in India. So do you is that one big shift, you think?
Not so much in these days, right? I think maybe 10 years back, I think the environment was probably not conducive to taking those large risks. I think today, the kind of people that we meet, the people across this table, I think there is a very clear understanding of the risk reward, right? And there's a conscious choice that people made. Ritesh didn't stumble into it, right? It was a conscious choice that he made,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
I think there are a few things that are coming together, right? I think we mentioned it some time back. I think the fact that technology today is a much bigger enabler than what it was 10 years back.
Right.
To my mind, if you were to ask me what is the biggest challenge that we face as an organization 9.5 years down the line, I think the biggest challenge is settling for status quo, right? And that is probably true of everything that you see in the startup ecosphere today, right? As businesses which were disruptors, if we believe that gives us a free pass to Wonderland,
right.
I'm not too sure we're going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
We have to constantly keep looking at where is the next disruption and how can I participate in the next disruption.
Right.
And for businesses like us, which have been at the forefront of all of this, how can I, while building an organization that obviously has financial responsibility and all of that, how can I build innovation into everything that we do on a daily basis?
Is that something that plays on your mind also? What next? I mean, we discussed this a little earlier when you still hadn't joined us, but is that something that plays on your mind also? How am I going to sort of stay ahead? What do I do next? What is the next big thing coming out of my stable?
Yeah, so I think constant product innovation and building out the right features that people will adopt and use is definitely important. So what we were thinking 3 years ago when we were looking at acquiring 5 million users was clearly different when we were looking at acquiring 30 million users. And now when we are thinking about how are we going to get the next 100 million users, the new innovations that we have to do have to be completely different. For example, we were banking a lot on converting inactive banked users, for example, people who use their cards as ATM cards but never use it for shopping, online, offline, and getting them to become wallet users. Now we are thinking about cash users, and we are actually setting up services where we are enabling people to add cash into their MobiKwik wallet and then use it for all their digital shopping. So from that point of view, yes, you have to constantly be ahead of the curve, because whatever you do, your competitors will try to copy.
Absolutely.
And the only way to stay ahead is to, figure out those trends or things that will make a huge difference before everybody else.
Right, to have some foresight really is I would imagine.
Just
very
wanted
important.
to make one point, if I may. I actually disagree with what he was saying in terms of taking the risk and plunge. I think, so today I have a bunch of friends who are now starting their startups. And I see them going through the same challenges of hiring people that I went through when I was hiring the first 5 people or the first 20 people. I think once an organization reaches some scale, has some PR,
then it just perhaps become. In fact, just hold that thought, because I need to take a quick break now. But that's something that we'll look at more closely after this quick break. So come right back. It's our fastest growing space. We've of course spent the last couple of minutes talking about startups, and a minor disagreement here on the panel on team building. Tell me one thing, Upasana, you were just making the point that it's still not easy to get the right team or get the team that you want, get a good team in place, unless you've you're a name that people are familiar with. Is that correct?
I believe that completely. I have at least 5 different friends who are starting their own companies right now. And putting together the first 5 or 10 employees, especially bringing those engineers out there, is extremely challenging. I mean, it might not be challenging today for a Flipkart or a Snapdeal.
The big guys,
And also in every category, all the key players. But I mean, for every one person or one company that is funded and has something going for them, there are 1,000 who are going to find it extremely difficult to get those right people. But I also think that they might actually be able to do far better, because if you have to work very hard to get employees who are committed to the cause, then they will stick. For example, all our top first 20 employees still work with us, and they work very passionately even today. Some of them have finished 5 years with us, some have finished 4 years with us, and they might have switched or changed roles, but they are very committed to the growth of the startup.
Right. Ritesh, has that been your experience also, getting the right team in place? I mean, you were 18, you said, when you started out, right? I mean, was that... it couldn't have been easy.
So I think it was one of the toughest things for me. But what I used to do, what I do, and what I continue to do is, my belief is, as a startup CEO, one of the most important jobs for you is just bring the smartest of people, give them the opportunity and independence to be able to run stuff.
But how do you convince, past this point, how do you convince them that you're worth it, that you're worth it? Take the risk on me, write this with me. How do you convince them?
Very early in the lifetime, like Upasana said, the first recruits are the toughest. Very early in the lifetime, what people look at you for is not funding, because you'll understandably not have a lot of capital, not your business, because your business will look very different from what it will look when you're large. Like when we were operating 3 hotels, people felt we owned all of those, and they did not imagine what it will become now and what it can become in the future. So it is all about, one, being able to talk about what you want to build, but it is less talk and more action. That is showing what you're committed towards. So my first recruitment actually took me 6.5 months to close, because for 6.5 months the guys saw me working hard and being so committed to what I was building that I'd work for 22 hours, I would go broke, but I'd still call him and take feedback and so on. That, like, the guy felt...
is he still with you?
He's still with me, and he's.
That's the point that Upasana was really making. When you sort of work that hard at it, perhaps there's something about your. Oh, I see. I see. Oh, okay.
He joined me for 10,000 rupees in salaries. Now he's a millionaire, and continues to be one of the strongest guys in the team. So I think reality of a startup is you'll go through various ups and downs, but if you're really committed and want to build something massive, then.
Then this is the space that you want to sort of be in.
That person has to know that they have to believe in the idea, they have to believe in you, and they have to believe that in the process they will create value for themselves.
Not all of them, of course, sort of rescaling the heights that they perhaps wanted. It's not the end of the world, because you see a lot of movement happening, and there's a lot of sort of, there's action happening in the space, and you guys are not holding it against someone that you were in a startup that sort of went bust or didn't do well. But that's fine. My doors are not closed to you.
In fact, the experience that you
Everyone
had
says this. I know what you're going to say, because they all say
I
this.
love people who have.
That's incredible, really.
As a leader of the company, anyone who writes to me saying, I am an entrepreneur, could not scale my company,
That just does it, right? That they nailed it.
They are like on the high priority interviewing list. Like, inko expedite karo, get them in here tomorrow.
Because it's the experience that you believe that counts, that
it's
you
the
believe
DNA,
that
it's
can...
the culture, it's everything.
I think it's a couple of other things. It's the ability that, what I see, right, when I meet them is the ability to think and dream, ability to pursue a passion, ability to see it through whatever the end is. I think that essentially builds an individual into a very different animal, right, as he goes on. And like Upasana said, right, if somebody writes to us saying that, listen, I've got a couple of startups, it didn't work, this is what I've learned, right, as long as people, for me as a business, which has been there for 9 years, how much has the person learned, right? Success teaches you some stuff.
Right.
Failure teaches you 10 times more.
More.
And the ability as and we come back to this innovation bit, right? How do companies innovate? They only innovate if you try multiple things, right? Typically, what 5% of them will work, right? So you have to have the ability to take failures, and that is extremely important, right? In our organization, about 33% of our people have spent 6 years plus, right? So how do you build an organization that can constantly give people that work environment where you can fail and it's okay, right? I think that's what builds great companies.
I see.
Right? That's what builds innovation.
Right. Okay, I'm completely running out of time, but quick questions. We were speaking earlier about how many entrepreneurs are created from any one startup, and how people get inspired to try their hand, to be their own bosses and try their hand with their own idea. How do you believe that really happens, Upasana? Because you don't see them moving, you rarely see them moving to, a corporate or something. Invariably you hear that, this person was working with X and has now set up his own Y.
So we actually already have a few employees who worked with us for a few years and have started their own young startups. But I also believe that, top 20 employees that I look at as our largest talent pool, in a few years they are all going to be, running the most coolest startups in India. And I see that because even today they are like entrepreneurs within the startup. They own a large part of value creation for us, and they're so committed to the cause that I know that they will not leave right now. But once we've sort of reached the next stage,
settled, perhaps,
I expect totally in the next 5 years all of them to start their own startups.
And
because there's nothing else they would want to do. They would definitely not.
Is that the ultimate aim then, for everyone?
Yeah, I think it is their aim. They're learning on the job how to do their own startup. I think that's what's driving them.
We also have several cases, obviously much longer time that we spent, of people not leaving us because they want to work elsewhere, but because the environment that they worked in is so free, they want to go and do things themselves, right? And we encourage it, right? I think it's great to ensure that you have various people who are doing things on their own, solving different problems that they think is important, coming out of a startup like us, having spent a few years. I think it's a great story to tell people internally as well.
Right. Ritesh, last words from you. There's enough room for everyone.
Yeah, I think there's enough room for everyone. I think as a part of our team, we believe that this is something that is the easiest to foster innovation. When people joined us, they were. So it's quite funny. Day before yesterday, I heard this from one of our employees saying, Ritesh, when you got me here, he was in a large Indian corporate, got out of IIMs and so on, and he was very scared of taking this risk. He was like, you got me to take 80% of the risk. You ensured the 20% because you were there. I want to take 100% now. I want to go all on, right? So I think encouraging this is very valuable. And I think as a company as well, our belief is our leadership will either become people who will be better than me and will take bigger ownership, or they will end up running companies that are equivalent or better than what we are building today.
Right. So all you need is perhaps a good idea and something that sets you apart from the other players.
Solving the real problem.
Solving the real problem. The one thing that you believe will the one thing every wannabe entrepreneur, if I may say, should keep in mind.
I think the consumer. Okay. Just ensuring that you keep very close to the consumer, whichever business that you are in, and have a good view on what is the next problem that they're going to face.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
So constantly evolving, and hence that will give you the clues for the next bit of innovation to take your business forward as well.
Upasana?
I think the biggest challenge for an individual who wants to become an entrepreneur is that whole chaotic period where you want to figure out what do you want to do, what do you want to do with your life, and why do you want to do it, and then you stick with that and don't give up. It takes a while, but the answer has to be clear. I still know what I'm doing today is solving payments for India, and that's exactly what I thought I would be doing 6 years ago when I moved back from US.
Well, that's immense clarity. I wish some more of us really shared that and could sort of answer that. Why am I here? What am I doing? What do I want to do? But thanks all so much for taking our time to speak to us, Ritesh, Sam, and of course, Upasana. Thanks very much for being with us today. Well, it's a wrap then. Remember, keep your thoughts coming in. Is this the best time to have your own startup? Well, all the experts and leaders in their space, of course, saying yes. What do you think? Remember, you can keep tweeting us, write to us on Facebook or SMS us. It's a wrap then. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.